Hello, everyone. Welcome to vFairs Epic Events podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Georgina K, also known as Gina K, to the podcast. Gina is an award-winning event marketer and a marketing manager for international Confex at Match Media. She has been recognized as one of the top 100 marketing influenced by technology for marketing and someone who's quickly making her mark as a leading voice in event-based marketing. Gina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Gina, walk us a bit through your background, what led you to the events industry and, how has your journey been so far?
Yeah, so I've actually been in the industry probably longer than I care to admit. And so I actually started off doing I actually failed my A-levels. So I couldn't get into university the first time and ended up doing an apprenticeship in business admin just to kind of get me through. And I worked at Newcastle University and I did a few years there. And then they went for a massive redundancy. That was a bit of a shock to 19-year-old me. But I ended up kind of roaring from the fire from that side of things. And I ended up landing myself an event assistant job at the School of Engineering and loved working there for 2 years. But obviously being surrounded by academics and academia and doing events, I just felt like there was more to events than what I could offer them. So at that point, I was like 2 years in and decided, oh my God, I love events so much. I wanted to do a degree in it. And I decided to pack my life up from Newcastle in the northeast of England, 450 miles down to London to study events management. Yeah, I decided to kind of really go in on the corporate side. And so I chose a degree at the University of Greenwich. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, obviously I started in September 2019. So my first kind of term was a bit tumultuous because obviously in February 2020, we all know what happened. And yeah, I kind of did my end of my first year and my second year during COVID. So quite a lot of my plans to kind of get experience and to really kind of immerse myself in the events industry kind of died on a whim. And so I ended up, looking for a placement. And I was really lucky that before the pandemic hit, I actually volunteered as a student volunteer at International Confex 2020, few weeks before it all happened. And so I kind of dropped Mash Media an email and was like, oh, have you got any placements going? At this point, I think I was like 120 interviews in, like 120 applicants in. So like I'd applied for a lot at that point. And so I was kind of like, oh, I really hope they'll answer me more than anything. And they did. And I managed to kind of land my place as a marketing assistant for the event production show. Um, and that was like the first trade show back in the UK after COVID. So I was so excited to be working on the event, provided lots of experience. And then from there, I then went to work on, once that show was over, work on exhibition news. And that just cemented my love for the trade show and exhibition industry. So I did all their marketing from the EN Awards to relaunching the Indies to everything like that. And then kind of coming up more recently to get into my role, what I'm doing now, like November 2020 kind of came up to me and said that the marketer was leaving. And so did I want to kind of work on international Confex? I was like, I was trying not to like fangirl about it. But yeah, I was like, okay, maybe I need to like think about this and just check it over. And I was like, actually, no, this is what I want to do. This is like the dream. So yeah, I absolutely jumped at the chance to be the marketing manager for Confex in November 2024. Had my first show in February 2025 and haven't looked back since.
That's quite a journey. I have questions around, because many people who started their career like during COVID, I just really want to see like how their journey. But let's start from Confex. So again, I have been to Confex. It's amazing. Tell me a bit more about like what goes into planning an event that big and huge in the UK, right? So, do you work on it throughout the year, or like what are some of the major milestones that assuming that February 2025 the event has finished now? What happens from March onwards? Just some of the building blocks leading up to the next year event.
Yeah, absolutely. Like definitely the first kind of month is nothing but looking through data kind of was like, it was such a great event and had such a positive vibe after it. I'm like very lucky to work on such a wonderful show that has like a wonderful community and has done for so many years. Confex has been around for 43 years. Yeah. So for me, it was quite daunting to kind of be like, oh my God, look at all this data. It was a bit nerve wracking, but yeah, that's where we started. We kind of looked at where 2024 was versus 2025, laid all that data. And then basically from there, we kind of accrued that into a marketing report that I did for like the management team. And then that then influenced a lot of the strategy going into 2026.
Mhm.
So kind of looking at the key kind of campaigns of, Visprom, Exprom, Bizcom, XCom, and newsletters, and then also like externals. And so like we looked at those ones, and then also seeing like what we could change with the resources we have
Mhm.
versus what is probably more likely to be for the vision for 2027, 2028. So we kind of stuck with everything we could do in 2026. And yeah, we've been working behind the scenes. A lot of the segmentation for XProm has been worked on like in April, May, June, and kind of getting everything set up for the year. Like in May, my entire marketing campaigns, my marketing emailers and my social posts, all those concepts, and then where it mattered in the marketing funnel, that was all mapped out for the entire year by about May. Yeah. And so then at that point, it's just executing it because I'm a
Mhm.
team of one. So it's like I have to do the strategy, then I have to kind of do the planning,
Right.
and then I just have to go on with the execution. So it's fun because it's kind of like, even though I might say I'm already in September. So we kind of looked at, even though I planned it in May, I came into September kind of knowing what I was going to do and being
Yeah.
like to my sales team, what do you need from me? Is this right? Or can we, switch these around? Or do you need less
Mhm.
of this? Do you need more of this? And it's all about having that plan in place early as possible to kind of make sure
Mhm.
that when it comes down to like February, I'm not flapping
Yeah.
about thinking, what am I going to post on, 4 days to go or 10 days to go. And I've got everything set out as early as possible as I can. So then I can start to use my brain for more bigger ideas and bigger concepts and things that will take more brain power.
Super impressive. I would have never guessed that for such a huge conference, your team of one. That's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because again, I would like to believe that again with AI tools and ChatGPT and all of that helps, but regardless of all of those tools, one has to be super organized and like a very clear mental map of what needs to be done. So, is there a playbook that that, oh, by the way, I need to have
Um,
6 posts or 8 posts or 10 posts? Like, just walk me through that grand plan that one has to follow.
yeah, so for me it's like it ebbs and flows depending on what is needed for, like, obviously at the minute we've got the Confex Event Supplier Awards going out. So like that's a big campaign that isn't to do with Confex that still impacts my marketing. So even though I would say, like, for me it's like one Viz prom, one X prom, 3 social posts minimum, and one news post, like one news content piece out a week. And that's what would comprise my week. And then there's also all the admin bits. But my critical path is, I would say, is my like Bible. And we
Mhm.
worked with my chief communications officer, Max, who I've worked with the entire 4 years I've been here, to really build into what is canon events in terms of what I need to like make sure I'm on time with. Reg approval process is live, you know, website is updated with eZone, all those bits and pieces. That Bible I have. And then my actual planning of what I need to execute each week is just the same. And even though it says one Visprom and one Xprom, it's like that's segmented from there. It's not just like a giant mail out every week. It has to be like, tailored and, high quality. So that's why I plan them so far in advance, because then I can kind of shop and choose which goes when each week.
One last question on this topic. Again, as I said, I'm just a bit amazed that you're just one person like doing all of that. Um, Again, God forbid, like if you're not feeling well, if you're sick, like what happens then? Like, do you have a backup? Because I think as like things can happen to anyone like in their life. They have a personal emergency, etc. Like, do you even like anyone within your company even think about it, or oh no, we don't. Gina is always there. So guarantee that
I
she will be
always
there.
preach that, like, if I get hit by a bus,
Yeah.
All my work is available on like we've got a shared drive, and
Okay.
we're very lucky. Our team of marketers all sit together. So even though I do all of Confex on my own, I've
Yeah.
got somebody that does all of the event production show that's working on the same timeline as me, and
Makes
somebody
sense.
also that's working on the PA show at the same timeline as me. So if one of us is off, then we'll pick
Sure.
up the work. We
Yeah.
work as a team of marketers together, and
Sure.
that's what I
Yeah.
think is kind of great. But equally, like you were saying before, like it's the use of AI. We do have like a custom GPT for each portfolio. So like all of my emails and all
Mm,
of my work is in like set chats. So like, when you have
mm,
like a chat, it's not like one per social post, it's all of my social posts in one chat. So
Yep.
like someone could be like, oh my God, what is this social post for this date? And then my chat GPT will bring it up for them. So everything's all kind of like is organized as it possibly can. That if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, the event would still be fine.
No, that's super impressive. Well done of being super organized. Um, see, I see that you're doing social media posts. You write a lot of blogs. In one of your blogs that you mentioned that you have been guilty of sending out generic emails or recycling content from last year. Like, what's the impact of this approach on your event registration? And typically, like, how do you suggest that one go about those things?
Sorry, say that again.
So within your blog, I saw that you mentioned that you have been guilty of sending out generic emails or recycling content from last year. What was the impact of this approach on your event registrations? Like, why do you think the checkbox approach to event marketing does not work anymore?
I
What are
think
the
that
consequences? Yeah.
time is kind of money at this point in time, and having a great tech stack is very key. Like we're very lucky at Mash that like even though all of our marketers work together, we all have the same tech stack. So like actually that also helps. But like last year, obviously I came in halfway through the campaign, and so a lot of the work that was done, it was like we didn't know where we were at and how that was working. So what I did is I just took what I knew from being part of exhibition news and having been involved in that community for the last few years and taking the best practice I'd learned from them and being like, right, well, where are we at? What was the campaign sitting at? I think the campaign was sitting at like an 11% open rate for emailers, and I by the end of the campaign, it was raised to 16.5% as an open rate. And out of the 4 campaigns that we tracked, and this year we're already sitting on a 23% open rate. So kind of taking as much, segmentation as we physically can. Yes, it takes longer, but I think it yielded better results, as I've said, with those open rates and the conversions to track them. But like, I think the more bespoke you get, the kind of bigger impact you get, because there's no point in like saying, obviously every event is different. And so therefore every audience type is different. And so I'm very grateful that I know who my audience is. So like for event marketers, I'm basically just marketing to myself. And so I know exactly what to say to them and what their pain points are. But for, say, large Congress organizers, I've looked at PCMA and the work that they're doing and how they address the pain points of their audiences. And I've embedded the way that they speak to their audiences and their communities. And I think that's definitely had a big impact on how well those messages resonate. But having a look at, the impact of what generic marketing is doing, and then also then setting up tests like segmentations and sequences, seeing how they compare, and it's almost like a science project. It's great. I'm like, it's school again. Seeing what works best and then sticking with it and evolving.
Just going back to Confex, like, are there certain metrics that you are trying to achieve? And if yes, are these on registrations, attendance, sales, dollar value? Like, what are the KPIs that you as marketing on for that conference?
So we actually had a really interesting development between 25 and 26. So 2025, I was targeted on pre-registration, and we got a conversion rate of, I think it was like 64%, which is really good.
Wow,
I love my audience and I love my community. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that kind of shows.
Brilliant.
But this year, instead of doing pre-reg, we're actually I'm being targeted on who's in the room. So like actual on-site attendees, because I had like in 2024, there was like 500 people that, registered on site that was actually approved. Whereas this
Mm,
year it was like 300 or so, because obviously we targeted them all to make sure that there was
mm,
less of them to
mm,
kind of ease that strain on registration. So I think that that for us, like that doesn't count towards my target, but there's still people in the room, and that's still the main reason why holding kind of Confex ultimately is
Mhm.
having people in that room to kind of make new connections with, to network. That's ultimately after every survey we've done, not only for Confex, but also for conference news and for exhibition news, is time and time again, people want to connect with people. And
Yeah.
so that makes it the highest kind of priority for me as a KPI.
Mhm.
We've also kind of taken a massive KPI as meetings. So how many meetings are done on site? We increased it, I think, last year by about 14%. I think
Mhm.
that the numbers was like there were like 17,000 connections in 2024, and then there was 22,000 connections in
Mhm.
2025. So for us, it's about increasing those connections and those meetings on site and trying to see how we can facilitate that as best we can. So where I think for this year we're actually working with Brain Date
Mhm.
to create these like um, groups where people can meet and talk about like new topics on the event industry and
Mhm.
really connect with people on the same wavelength as them. So that's going to be really fun. So we've kind of listened to kind of what delegate feedback is and provided spaces to be able to do that, because that's kind of ultimately our job, is to listen and hopefully help. Apart from the sales side, obviously that's more of my sales team, but I
Mhm.
am like one of my KPIs is to get sales inquiries through the website, but
Mhm.
we're working on that. We're currently in redevelopment of the whole website at the minute, with the whole sitemap changing over the next month. So that's
Mhm.
also all me. So we're working with ASP to make sure that the functionality of that is augmented to each segment.
Mhm.
So if they're like a corporate event planner, they'll see all of the like brand experience lab sessions,
Mhm.
or if
Mhm.
they're an exhibition organizer, then they'll get the EN like hub
Mhm.
sessions. But then all their exhibitors that are showing up on there also show up on the right segmented audience type. And then also for like if they've got any news specifically for those audience types, and that'll also come up for them. So that's all as kind of free flowing as possible. So yeah, I think I've got like a couple of like milestones in terms of projects that I also need to kind of complete this year, which is really exciting.
Um, just purely, again, did you participate in Confex yourself as well? I know that you have huge responsibility, but do you go there in person as well, or are you just the person behind the desk making sure everything is working fine?
No, no, no. I've been for the last 4 years, and they can't stop me from attending ever again. I love it.
Uh,
Yeah, I've I went.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
so I'm going to
I've been.
just like I want to learn a bit more from you as an attendee now, and so I can as a marketing manager, of course, you have different responsibility, but as an attendee, when you go out there, and I know that it's hard to not still wear the hat of you owning Confex, like that's your core job. Just like what's your take on attend like why like what are people mostly looking for from conferences nowadays? Is it connecting with people, or is it the content piece, which is that I'm there to learn more of how I can do A, B, and C better? Like,
I think
what's
it's
Conflict
different.
really known for, and what do you look for when you attend a conference?
Okay, so for what I look for personally, as I'm an education event nerd, so I will always be content first, connection second, because I think you can look at it from either side of the street almost, where content will probably be given to you afterwards. So you don't necessarily need to put that first, but equally you can connect with people in advance. So equally you don't need to put that first. So I think it depends on like your different types of audiences and the matrix that you've got in terms of the personas that you have for your like event. And so, but me personally, like I think that I can attend an event with just content and achieve the connection, but I can't always attend an event that's all about connection and have no content.
Right.
So I think that that's kind of the way that, especially for like bigger events, but even smaller events, I think as long as you know that you're just going there for connection, it's like a little, you know, after work social, then you get the connection, but not the content. But if you go for the content, you'll always get the connection.
Yeah. See, one of the toughest job I feel that nowadays is of a marketing manager whose KPI is registrations and attendance. And I will tell you why. Of course, I interview a lot of people. Every single person I've interviewed this year, and there are at least 50 of them, they all mention how people register late now. Gone are those days where the conference is done, you're giving this early bird discount, and you have 50% of your quota signed up like right away. I don't know about conflicts, but do you also see this concept of late registrations, and then how you still control your nerves that everything will be fine and I'll still achieve my target of having people register and sign up?
My nerves never existed. I don't think, yeah, I think that, like we have found it's coming later and later. So I'd say probably in excess of 60% of our registration comes in the last 3 weeks.
Mhm.
Um, Holding your nerve for that number does, burn you out. But I think that that's what I've tried to do differently this year. So obviously last year is the first year I worked on the event. So maybe we should do this next year and then see how where we're at. Do it where we're at again. But like last year, we had 60% of our registration happen in the last 3 weeks. Yeah, that's a big number. But for this year, we've already got like regis open and live. Like registration for us is already open and live. We are about sitting at about 500 attendees already.
That's
So I
good.
mean, yeah, I mean like that's 1/10 of the way. 1/10
Yeah.
of the way.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I don't do nothing. I just do the marketing. So yeah. So we've still got a long way to go, but I do think that when we were looking at data, we'd already started between between November and February, or September and November, February, or October and February. And we found that there was no correlation between if they'd pre-registered, like registered their interest in like January, or whether they pre-registered their interest in like August. So we just opened it straight after Confex is done. So there was like, see you next year, register your interest. The registration form is live on the website, has been since the day after kind of Confex was finished. So we'll find out and I'll let you know.
And Gina, like I'm assuming that with Confex, you're marketing it everywhere, right? LinkedIn, Instagram. Like just my last podcast, they mentioned TikTok was their best platform where they were advertising. Just as like, how do you determine the best platforms and the content formats for your audience? How do you decide where to focus your marketing efforts for maximum impact?
So I think for us is like, you know, you have to figure out what your audience discoverability habits are. So for us, a lot of our attendees will spend their spare time on Instagram. So we'll put a lot of our fun exposure, you know,
Mhm.
that side of things, almost like the cold marketing onto
Yep.
Instagram first to see how that performs. If it's good enough, it'll go onto LinkedIn if it gets a good laugh. If it doesn't, I mean, most of our marketing, if it's like 6 months to go, that went out on all platforms. We don't have TikTok, but for me, like the best way to use TikTok is if you have like an Eventbrite version, like an Eventbrite link to go into it, which we
Mhm.
don't. So for us, it'd be like there's too many steps in that touch point for them to convert, for us to put time into that this year when I've got so much on my own to deliver
Mhm.
in terms of marketing. And I would say like personally, like 10% of my marketing budget, which not only includes like money, but also my time, will go
Mhm.
on to something new. So 10% of my budget this year is going into meta adverts on Instagram because that's where I know my audience is already on there.
Mhm.
It's a good bet on terms of my time and worth. And also I've done them before, so it's a little
Mhm.
less scary than having a full blown account for TikTok. But we used to have a TikTok for exhibition news and it did pretty decently. So I think it just depends on kind of who you're trying to target and what resources you have. There is some teams that have like multiple marketers or a
Mhm.
specific social media manager, and they'll have the capacity to do a lot of things, which is
Mhm.
great. But ultimately, for me, I don't. So I kind of choose LinkedIn as my preferred network for my audience because they're so well engaged on there as event professionals, and there is so much data to kind of be captured around that in terms of like click throughs,
Mhm.
and also kind of where they're from, and all the demographic side of the data that we don't get when we're asking people to register.
Mhm.
And then it's Instagram, then it's Facebook, only because I have to have it because I have to have Instagram because of Meta, and and then Twitter's last. I would delete Twitter if I could, but yeah.
Once the event is over, do you take feedback from your participants, and how do you use that feedback to further strengthen your community and improve future events? Any example that you can give that has
Yeah,
shaped your marketing strategy?
absolutely. Yeah. So for this year, when I did my marketing report, one of the biggest questions we ask all of our registration, like when are they start that again. So yeah, when we were doing registration and when I did my marketing report, I could see from the data of intent in terms of what people were interested in that sports venues was actually kind of like in the lower third of interest, we actually in 2025 had a sporting venue pavilion, which did amazingly, did actually have like loads of interest on site, but pre-event in the registration, the numbers didn't match up in terms of what we expected it to be. So for this year, for 2026, we've changed that into iconic spaces because that includes, sporting venues because they are iconic spaces, but it
Mhm.
also includes like museums and galleries and, ultimately like other venues that are like so iconic that just doesn't kind of really fit into like that usual hotel or international venue that you usually get. So yeah, we've changed something on the floor plan to really kind of make sure that when people are on site, they are like, oh my god, yes, iconic spaces. Of course, why would I not want to like have a look around there? So it's kind of like about this the combination of like wayfinding with registrations and data about how we can make that a better experience for them rather than what we want to sell. Like we don't need to sell, more spaces on a specific pavilion. What we want to do is we want to create an easy pathway for our delegates to find our exhibitors on the show floor. And then I'd say like another really good example is actually in June, I'd like done my marketing report, done my marketing strategy, was planning everything, was doing all the brochures, and
Mhm.
then found out that like, oh, our management team would like love to change the theatre names. And I was like, that's actually fine. That's no problem. I'll just have to redo pretty much everything, all my marketing collateral. Because obviously, like, we actually found this partnership with UXO, for the World Experience Organization,
Mhm.
run by like James. And we've collaborated with them on the Conference News Creative Leaders Summit. And it was just an explosion of like passion for like where things are going next in the agency and the brand experience world. And so we actually like renamed one of our theaters a brand experience lab, and we've changed all of our theater names based on the data that's come out of like what we found in registration and in terms of like which theaters were amazing and which theaters didn't do as well as we'd expected to do. We've kind of reacted as positively as we can to kind of make sure we've just because we are kind of what's going to be the future of the events industry. So, we really want to kind of make it as impactful 2 days as possible. And I think that that kind of shift in the names of the theaters is a small but really impactful kind of movement into where we're going next that we're really looking forward to. And we've also changed, all of our the way that we're doing like the way that we're doing our sessions. So quite a lot of the time last year, we had a lot of delegate feedback that was saying that quite a lot of the sessions were quite salesy and obviously like one-on-one presentations, which I mean, sometimes you just kind of help when it comes to big events like that is that, there's only so much proofing we can do when it comes to kind of working on such a large scale event of like 9 different theaters. And so this year, we have changed the way that we're working and that we've got all of the topics sorted based on the data from last year and the data that we've collated from, focus groups, from surveys, from our 100s, from our communities. And we've already got the sessions. We're already building the speaker portfolio out of all of the conference theaters and all the content sessions. And then basically exhibitors or sponsors will be able to purchase moderating spots
Mhm.
to really kind of not only get one-on-one time with experts in that field and on that topic, but also so that then it's like, right, well, you're part of solving this pain point rather than presenting us with a pain point and expecting the solution to being kind of taking it a whim. So yeah, I'm really excited to kind of see how that develops because that was a big piece of feedback that we had from 2025.
Brilliant. So just one like major question. This podcast won't be over unless we discuss a bit more about AI. You did mention, you have your custom GPT, but again, for a role like yours, AI, it appears, can help a lot. So what has worked well for you when it comes to AI, and what do you think? It's still a hype, and one has to be like a lot more involved from a human angle as compared to just leaving everything to the AI. So someone like in a similar marketing role, what would you recommend that they absolutely must make use of AI within that role?
I mean, actually using it properly, like, not the free version, I've I have heard some daunting stories about people putting delegate data into free ChatGPT. That's terrifying to me. But I mean, we're all on this learning path together. And I think that, getting a custom GPT, there's loads of amazing people out there in our industry that are, really hitting the nail on the head when it comes to how we as marketers can use it better. And I think one of those examples is the fact that we worked with Message Matrix about 3 weeks before Confex happened, and they provided us with an AI WhatsApp concierge. So where you basically get a QR code and then you scan the QR code and you get entered into the chat with International Confex, and you can just ask it as many questions as you want so that people don't keep emailing me. and, and they can basically, because I'd put all the answers in from what we've had from previous years, and we put that into a FAQ, and it has the full conference program and it has all the data it needs. And that Message Matrix AI solution has been amazing to see and like really work with in terms of kind of next level in terms of helping me as a marketer and just taking almost that pressure point off of, troubleshooting and stuff. I mean, it's just helpful for everything. I don't think there's only one use case that I've found that AI can't help me with so far, and that's making logo walls for marketing. So like when you say like, oh, this is who signed up for 2025, and it's a load of what like logo, a
Yeah.
load of logos,
Mhm.
even. Yeah, that's the use case that I haven't found it's worked for. Because obviously if you put in like everybody has different logos coming from, the internet. So yeah, that's the only one I haven't found anything to work for, but I definitely think the strengths in terms of the way that it's being used by a lot of our partners and our tech stack is amazing. But everyday wise, I think it just helps with admin. The amount of admin that we're doing, a lot of the bulk. I mean, the back end of mine, it has my tone of voice in it. I've fed it all of the social posts that we've done for the last year. So it speaks like Confex. It's very much in our tone of voice. I very rarely now have to edit what comes out of ChatGPT. All the hashtags are in lowercase if it needs to be. Or it doesn't use the M dash, what everybody hates, or the
Yeah.
rocket emoji that everybody hates.
Yeah.
I think it's just figuring out how to make it work for you. Like we sat down, I think, with our full marketing team at the beginning of the year and was like, well,
Mhm.
what do we spend most of our time on? What are we wasting our time on? What are the top
Mhm.
5 things that we can kind of go back and be like, actually, these are the 5 processes that we hate to do. And how
Mhm.
can we knock them down to like as minimum amount of time as possible? And then we've then worked more creatively from that sense so that we get
Mhm.
to have that kind of the fun side of marketing.
And who's that AI guru within your company who then, once you guys have decided that these are the 5 tasks that we absolutely don't want to work on, who works on that GPT because someone still needs to go back and solve that problem using AI?
So our head of business, let me start again because I don't actually know if that is his job title. Let me start. So our head of business systems is Sammy, and he has been the driving force behind not only getting ChatGPT into Mash Media, but also best practices with it. He also uses Power BI. He's an all round smart whiz
Okay.
and everything, and he's the one that also
But
got.
there has to be someone. So there is someone who exists within the company because, many times it's really about who will execute it, and, who knows what the potential of AI also is within the company.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously he's the one that got it in the first place. Having done HubSpot, he's the one that got HubSpot in as well. He's so smart with all of that side of things and getting it in and figuring out which one is the best one for us as a business. Because I
Yeah.
think that's the hardest point is that obviously what's good for us isn't going to be good for RX because they're at a completely different scale to us. Ultimately, we now own our own GPTs, so I'll do my own configuration of my own back end of the GPT.
Nice.
And yeah, like it's up to us to also kind of be proactive in that professional development and
Mhm.
and really kind of go after, ways that everybody else is trying out and being forefront. The AEO does marketing social. And we were
Mhm.
talking about the different ways that we all use like AI as different exhibition organizers. And it's like we have to put ourselves up for that professional development, much like anyone in the events industry would come to Confex and learn more about AI from Confex. It's exactly the same premise that we ourselves have to put ourselves through.
What has been the most impactful marketing initiative you have ever executed for Confex as of now? Like, and if
So
you can
for,
share results, yeah.
for 2025, I would definitely say that actually working with Excel was like I have 3 that like my top 3
Mhm.
would be like working with Excel. So actually their campaign on their What's On actually got like a whopping like 600 website views and about 300 conversions. Yeah. But I mean, it makes sense. A lot of people kind of must visit their site, and it is the hub for most of our industry, at least in the trade show side. So yeah, it was really interesting to see that that was such a great converter. Second was actually using LinkedIn ads. I think we had over 223,000 impressions and 245 website conversions from
Wow.
five, yeah, from 5 images and 5 bits of text, which was really, really interesting. I think the top one was renew your passion for events. So
Mhm.
that one was the most converted one. So that's which gave me some insight about what people are feeling in the industry when I was like first starting out on it. And then the third one, most like kind of impactful, was working with delegate wranglers. Yeah, they actually kind of got us over 270 registrations from their community. And they're an amazing community because they not only kind of knew me from before I worked in Confex and before I worked at MASH actually as a
Mhm.
student, they they've been there for the industry for years and they were like every step of the way, they were like, because I wasn't sure in some points what I should be doing. So they were
Mhm.
really kind of supportive and they were throwing us ideas left, right, and center on how we can really get in front of their community and the best ways for their community. And it was just that level of proactiveness that I think that was really impactful in terms of the campaign and the way that they worked with us.
Those are brilliant stats. Again, you should be proud of yourself. So, Gina, like for the event marketers who are just starting, like, and again, you have, I think you have climbed up the ladder very, very quickly within your profession. But like, what advice would you give them when it comes to creating content, being impactful, drive engagement? What would your suggestions be for them?
I think it is a balance to not, marketing is a never ending task. So I think understanding what your boundaries are, especially if you're just starting out, and then focusing on where your community is. And if you meet your community where they're at, then you'll have a great kind of relationship with your community, which is ultimately you wouldn't have an event without them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, read the reports, read the articles about your community, go to those networking events, make friends, be part of that community. And I'm so lucky to be part of mine.
Um, Gina, if there's someone who wants to learn a bit more about you, connect with you, get some tips, or even learn a bit more about Confix, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
LinkedIn always.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina, for being on the podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. We'll see you in the next episode. If you have any questions, reach out to Gina on LinkedIn. Thanks, Gina.
Thank you.